Fellas, we are looking today at the exotic rocket launcher, Deathbringer. Quite a name, right? Now this rocket launcher actually requires a quest in order to obtain it. Down below in the description will be links to quest guides for those that are trying to get Deathbringer. But from us guys, we are going to be reviewing this weapon in both PvP and in PvE. So first up, its intrinsic exotic perk. We've got Dark Deliverance. Fires remotely detonated projectiles that drop void orbs on enemies. Hold trigger to fire, release to detonate. Now the weapon also comes with volatile launch for that increase in blast radius, alloy casing, which greatly increases that reload speed, which is super noticeable, and finally the trait, Dark Descent. The further a void orb falls, the more powerful its detonation becomes. This is really interesting. So not only can you shoot this rocket launcher and actually have it self-detonate, but actually detonating it above an enemy and having those void orbs track toward them will result in greater damage. So here at Greg, a direct hit hits for 5,148 per void orb. And by the way, Deathbringer actually shoots 7 void orbs. This results in a total damage value of 36,036. Now there might have been some impact damage in there, but I don't think it was a big number. Regardless though, 36,000 is not a lot of damage, not for a heavy weapon. But when you actually take the time to shoot above an enemy, this little bit of travel time in this lost sector increases our damage to 14,533 per void orb for a total whopping damage of 101,731. Now that is of course if each one of these void orbs track properly and detonate on the target we wanted to, which we have no control over, because if there's multiple adds in front of us, it'll just kind of do its own thing and kill everything. Now to put this damage number in perspective, Izanagi's Burden in the current sandbox with honed edge ×4 and the exotic catalyst hits for a whopping 86,284. So yes, technically on paper, Dark Descent with Deathbringer, at least inside of this small corridor in this lost sector, can exceed that of Izanagi's Burden. Now like I mentioned yesterday, what is the height cap on these void orbs? Or for that matter, the damage cap? Well, we took to the Dreaming City and we started popping shots off in the air to see how far we can actually shoot above a target. Turns out not as far as we think, which is probably a good thing considering how many encounters we have in the game that are kind of more in close corridors. But after popping a few shots off, no, you can't get ridiculous with it because essentially the void orbs will just dissipate before making contact. So you kind of want to see the target like on the bottom of your reticle when you shoot to simultaneously get the full damage and not have the void orbs dissipate. Plus, the further you get above your target, the more those void orbs spread out. So at some point, you kind of want to stay somewhat close to the target you're trying to land all of these void orbs on, but be far enough to get the most out of your damage. Now, is Deathbringer an exotic rocket launcher that is going to be a must-have going forward in this sandbox? It's got the damage, it's got the stats, it's got great reload speed, and I like the archetype that it's in. The only downside of this weapon is it is a little unpredictable. And I don't know if it's necessarily unpredictable due to the nature of the weapon, or more or less, there's just a learning curve and I haven't quite grasped it yet. To me, I think in certain encounters, especially if we come across like a raid encounter this Saturday where we're dealing with like a really big boss in a very open area where we can take advantage of Dark Descent, then yes, I think something like Deathbringer could be extremely beneficial. Now, I'm not sure if we should be comparing it directly to our top DPS weapons, things like Izanagi's Burden. To me, Deathbringer is like a better Wardcliff in some ways. Like Wardcliff is great for clearing out adds, but due to that reload speed, considering we don't have barricades anymore, that auto reload as well as Lunafaction boots, Wardcliff is very much going to fall behind. Whereas something like Deathbringer, with the reload speed that it has and the archetype that it is, and the fact that it has great AoE damage and the potential to increase that damage even beyond something like Wardcliff, is going to make this a choice over that exotic rocket launcher. Now the only other question we had before we get into PvP was whether or not this exotic rocket launcher could proc something like Dark Matter. Turns out it can't. I mean, we figured it wouldn't, but it's like one of those things you just gotta try, right? Considering that it's void orbs, I was hoping there was gonna be like a separation in the coding of the game, and the game be like, oh yeah, that's a void ability kill. And voila, we've got a weapon that can proc subclass abilities. It's coming, boys. One day, we'll be looking at a bunch of weapons that can proc things like Roaring Flames, Dark Matter, etc. That's like the next step in nasty. Now, inside of PvP, this rocket launcher pretty much does what any other rocket launcher could do, but with a twist. There was a lot of shots I fired here in Elimination, considering that Elimination elimination grants heavy every single round, I would just spray and pray. Like literally just shoot off somewhere in the vicinity of an enemy and it would track them down. It's actually pretty crazy. I still think that if you were going to use an exotic rocket launcher inside of PvP, Truth would most likely be the better option, especially for targets that rush you. But I can't help but think about the times that you deal with campers or you deal with people that might be sitting in a room waiting for you with a shotgun. They could potentially be out of the way just enough where a regular rocket couldn't kill them. But lo and behold, if you had Deathbringer, you just give everybody in the room some dark deliverance. So yes, there is a possibility that at some point in elimination, I could see myself using Deathbringer. But I do not believe this will be a main power weapon for me inside of PvP. Well, fellas, that is our review there for Deathbringer. Again, quest guide down below if you're looking to get this bad boy. Also, huge shout out to Cludes for allowing us to get on his account and play with this exotic rocket launcher. Pretty sure he was like one of the first ones to get it. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.